Hey everyone, Agentic AI isn't just coming, it's already here and it's changing the way work gets done across the enterprise. I'm Evan Kirstel and welcome to this Ask Me Anything session with Emergence AI. Today we're diving into the most exciting shift in enterprise tech that I can remember, agents creating agents and what that means for the future of AI in the workplace. Super excited to be joined by this really distinguished team at Emergence AI, a company that's right on the edge of innovation when it comes to building autonomous AI agents and orchestration systems that are reshaping how businesses operate. This week, Emergence AI introduced something big. It's called Craft with a C, and it's the world's first natural language self serve platform built to tackle one of the biggest and most expensive problems in enterprise IT, outdated manual data pipelines. We're talking a $200 billion problem globally. Kraft flips this model on its head. They flip the script and lets anyone from data analysts to executives turn their business goals into smart, self-verifying multi-agent systems. No technical background, just plain old English. And it works in minutes. So the result are going to be faster insights, no busy work, and tremendous cost savings. So, for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to this all down. We're going to explore, what's real right now versus hype in the agentic AI space, how autonomous agents are already being deployed at scale in areas like data engineering, testing, compliance, and beyond, and the crazy idea of agents that can actually create and manage other agents. And yes, that's already happening. So, most importantly, whether you're a tech leader or a business exec, you need to know how and when to be ready for this shift with tools that just follow commands to the alternative intelligence systems that are just chasing outcomes. So let's get right into it with this super distinguished panel of experts, and we'll start with introduction. Satya, maybe introduce yourself, and we'll go around the panel here to your really distinguished, incredible team.
Thank you, Evan. Thrilled to be here. I am Satya Nitta, co-founder and CEO of Emergence, and previously I was at IBM Research, working on a variety of computing problems.
I can't wait to dive in. Next, let's go to Ravi. Ravi, just briefly introduce yourself and your background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Ravi Koku, co-founder and CTO. I broadly look at technology strategy and also long-time IBM research.
Thanks for joining. Shom, maybe introduce yourself to the viewers and the team here.
Hi, thanks, Evan. Hi, folks. I had product here at Emergence. Before this, I had hardware, including OS and firmware, at a company called Merlin Mind. And before that, I was a semiconductor technologist at Broadcom and IBM.
Fantastic. Ashish, thanks
Thanks,
for
Evan.
joining.
I'm Ashish Jagmohan. I am a distinguished scientist at Emergence. Before this, I spent several years at IBM Research, working on a variety of problems related to NLP, AI, etc.
And last and not least, we have Vivek. Vivek, maybe introduce yourself to the team here.
Hi, folks. I'm Vivek Haldar. I lead our AI agent engineering teams here at Emergence. Before that, I was at Google.
Thanks for joining. So let's dive right in, Satya, and set the scene for us. It's been a busy week for news. If you could introduce, Emergence AI perhaps better than I did, but also Craft and the fundamental problems you're solving for enterprises.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Emergence is a way we think of ourselves as our mission statement is to advance the science as well as the development of AI agents. So we are an R&D infused team, but we are utterly focused on building production scale AI systems. And our view of AI is basically that, especially as it comes to AI performing actions and returning real value and real ROI to enterprises, that it's not just a single model, but it's a system of intelligent agents and a system of intelligent systems that come together to solve problems. yesterday we launched our first data-focused AI platform that we call Craft. And what we're doing, there's a variety of innovations in Craft, and what Craft is meant to help people do is to automate work across the data pipeline. So out of the box, it allows you to do a bunch of things like talk to your data, whether it's in databases or data warehouses. It allows you to write code, and it basically writes code and allows you to automate things like ETLs, etc. So it's a variety of out of the box automation across the data pipeline. But more importantly, we also intend the platform to be a launching point to build more purpose-built systems that are agentic in nature and that do the heavy lift of customizing this to domains of choice across a variety of problems and use cases. We ourselves have carefully built this platform after working closely with a number of design partners in industries like semiconductors and oil and gas, etc., where we've dealt with uh, hundreds of gigabytes of enterprise data and learned much about how to customize the platform and customize solutions to solve real problems in a very short period of time. So essentially, a way to think of what we're building is, if you look at a data scientist's job, they spend 90% of the time doing a variety of data wrangling, data cleaning, data migration type stuff before they eventually start writing machine learning models and pulling insights from their data. The platform automates much of this work, and in time it'll automate most of it, and it allows you to collapse the design time from days and weeks and months to mere minutes, with natural language. So it's basically yet another advance in the long march of AI, moving to higher and higher levels of abstraction and solving more and more problems that people do in certain fields of endeavor. Um, and in the platform, we have the ability for agents to create agents. There is a meta agent called the orchestrator, which can create and spin other agents on the fly, especially to connect to enterprise systems at runtime. It can create LLM agents, etc. There are other advances in here like self-improvement and state-of-the-art long-term memory, etc. So that's basically a way to think of the platform. We can find out much more with lots of demos at emergence.ai.
I can't wait to dive in. Before we open up to questions, I have so many questions. But first, something that's intriguing me is this concept of agents creating agents. So, how does that work? How does it accelerate and scale the kind of work you're describing, like automating data flows?
So I'm going to ask my colleague Ashish to weigh in here. Ashish, can you take this? You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Can you folks hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Evan, I wonder if it would be helpful for the audience to talk a little bit about agents first before we get to agents creating agents.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's talk about agents, right? So what are agents? So there's so many different definitions of agents, so many ways of thinking about agents. I think one way I think about agents are they're entities that can sense, that can reason and plan, and then can act, right? And an agent can change the state of the world by acting upon it, and it can change its own state by acquiring knowledge, etc., right? Acquiring skills, what have you. And so, in general, our agent building, our agentic systems specialize at solving tasks that require multiple steps of reasoning, and that require perhaps the usage of multiple tools to accomplish the task, to change the state of the world in the desired way, etc. Right. So baseline, that's how I think about an agentic system. All right. And so the idea now is that when you as a user come to the platform and you would like a task accomplished, you don't really want to care about whether there are agents already in the system that can accomplish your task, or how those agents should be composed, or what have you. And so the way that we think about agents creating agents is uh, that these are, so our agent creating agent system, the ideal is when you come to it with a task, it creates new agents on the fly if it needs to. And it dynamically composes existing agents and new agents to accomplish your task. And it does all of this so that you don't have to think about how to build a multi-agent system, or you don't have to think about agents, right? You have to think about the task that you want to accomplish. The system dynamically builds agents, composes them, solves your task. End of story.
Wow, that's incredible. One question that's come in here is, how does Craft differ from traditional natural language platforms? What makes it agentic versus just calling it agentic? I don't know if Ashish or Satya, you want to address that, or one of the other team members.
Yeah. Vivek, do you want to handle this?
Yeah, sure. So building on what Ashish said, we are creating agents that solve these very niche problems. And I think that the crucial thing that makes it truly agentic is that we are reasoning and planning and then delegating these subtasks to the agents most suitable for solving a problem. And kind of another metaphor I like to use is you can think of some of the pre-built agents in the system as kind of the big rocks. So for example, we have a web automation agent that can perform tasks in the web, browse the web as if it were a human. We have a number of data analysis, data intelligence, data science agents. And then, agents creating agents you can think of as the little rocks that kind of fill in the spaces between the big rocks for these really niche problems that, the big agents that are task specific can't do. And what makes the whole thing agentic really is are these aspects of planning, reasoning, task breakdown, and then also verifying and improving the answers that the system is producing. The other interesting thing is that these agents that are created dynamically, very crucially, are saved and reused. So it's like your system, just like, say, a new employee is picking up new skills and improving their effectiveness and impact over time.
Wow, that's really compelling. Another question that's come in from the audience, how do you handle trust and control? This is an important topic at the C-suite as well, around privacy, data protection, security, compliance. I mean, so many topics there to unravel. How do you respond to that?
So, Ravi, do you want to handle that?
Sure, yeah. So trust and governance in general is a very important topic around agents, right? And it actually is a part of our core design principles as we get all these agents and agentic systems in place, right? One of the most important steps that we are taking as a part of this is to make sure that, right, like first of all, the governance problem and the trust and control problem is well defined in terms of policies that enterprises themselves should be able to specify. And then, right, like there are mechanisms that we enable, right, like that will ensure that these kinds of policies are enforced. And secondly, the most important thing, as agents themselves evolve with time, right, like while understanding all these enterprise systems and being able to operate with the standard operating procedures of enterprises, is the notion of human in the loop. Agents are, while the eventual goal is fully autonomous systems, right, like you really have to have the human in the loop to make sure that, right, whatever they're doing is according to what the enterprises really would want the agents to do, right, and align with certain principles. So from the perspective of, right, like the procedures and policies that enterprises need, right, like governance is at the design, right, like enabled through policies and the human in the loop.
Really interesting. Another question about industries in the comments here on X, and again, you can watch on YouTube, X, as well as LinkedIn. You mentioned semiconductor and telecom. What's been the impact so far? What ROI do you anticipate? Why these industries versus others, maybe?
Shom, do you want to handle it? Talking about basically the use cases potentially and what we anticipate here.
Sure, Satya. Yeah. So, Satya had mentioned earlier in the, at the start that we worked with some design partners to essentially ensure that craft is purpose built to handle, real data problems. And actually, a semiconductor is a excellent example of that. Semiconductor by nature is a very heavy data intensive industry that goes all the way down from tools in fabs such as TSMC, Global Foundries, to the fabless companies at the top who are actually designing the chips, who measure the performance of the chips, for example, the frequency at which a chip is running, or SRAM performance, etc. Right? So it's, in general, it's a very heavy data intensive industry. And there are some critical parameters that would be very pertinent to the fabless companies, such as yield, for example, of the semiconductor chips. And it's critical that they be on top of that, because if your yield is, let's say, lower than what it needs to be, you are essentially either losing revenue, or you're increasing cost because you need to buy more of the wafers to meet customers' demand, right? So and some of the large fabless company, and one of our design partners is a very large semiconductor company. They have thousands of products running in the line, and there's a ton of data coming in every week, right? In some cases, like hundreds of gigabytes for just one product on a weekly basis. And this is basically a machine level intensive problem that it's almost impossible for humans to be on top of. And just to elaborate on that a bit more, when I say if you look at some of the critical parameters, for example, yield, right? If there's a drop in the yield, first of all, you need to detect the drop, and that may not be trivial, because it may not be simply like it's below a certain level. It could be that this could be a downward yield trend that it might take a while for a human to detect, whereas our agentic system, it can detect things like that. And then the next step would be to do a root cause analysis. And root cause analysis is also non-trivial, because it's not just looking about one set of data, it's looking at multiple data collections that come from disparate data sources, from the foundries to, they call it OSATs, which is offshore assembly and test, to, to more data that the fabless companies generate themselves. So you need to now collate, understand, multiple disparate data sources, figure out if you have a yield detractor, what specific, you need to essentially drill down and figure out what exact component, or maybe even the tool is causing that yield, right? So what we essentially developed with this fabless computer is data to insights. And as part of that, we had to really understand what a yield engineer, so to speak, at the fabless company does. What is their workflow? You can think about it as a forward deployed engineer that Palantir famously uses. So we had to essentially do that, right? We needed to understand the workflow in great detail, code that up in natural language, and essentially go from data to insights, right? So we were able to replace what a human yield engineer would do, which would be very time consuming, right? Some of these analysis can take days, and we were able to essentially cut it down to minutes, right? It's minutes, as in like maybe 20 to 30 minutes. It's still very data intensive, so it's not real time. It needs to be done in an offline processing. But this was essentially very valuable to the fabless companies to to be on top of yield, take immediate actions to counteract all these anomalies that we're seeing.
Well, fascinating.
Yeah. And if I can just add one more thing to what Sean was saying, it's really important to understand how these agents are kind of fitting in and complementing the skill sets of the existing engineers in the organization. So obviously these large semiconductor companies have extremely capable engineers. However, their domain specialization is in hardware design and semiconductor design, and not so much in data science or ML or AI. And that is exactly where these AI agents are coming in and helping them. Um, and because of this kind of complementarity of skills, a lot of this kind of yield data would often not get analyzed most effectively or in an optimal way or it might just go unanalyzed. So another way to look at it is that these agents are really freeing up the time of the engineers in the company to do what they are best at in their domain.
Wow, well, that's a tremendous value there. Another question here coming from YouTube. What kind of existing tools, systems does Craft integrate with? Is it out of the box? How much integration is required or expected?
So Ravi or Shom, one of you guys want to take it?
Yeah, I think
Do you want to start first, and I can add to it?
yeah, sure. Yeah, so we are building with a few different ways of connecting to many systems, right? Like we have over the last few months, we have started with open API specs, and then right, like when MCP came along, we adopted MCP, and right, like through a variety of mechanisms, right, like that are exposed by different systems, right, like our orchestrator itself is actually able to leverage the different interfaces in order to integrate and in order to right, like retrieve data or do actions on top of it. We also have a web automation agent which actually works at the interface, at the web interface level, at the browser interface level. So through that, a number of web applications can be automated, and our system basically adapts between each of these different possibilities to pick the most effective modality by which it can interact with the different systems. And it also ends up remembering what works best for each of these endpoints, so that right in the future settings, it's not continuously planning and discovering. Whatever it knows, whichever parts it figures out work well, end up getting saved and getting reused.
Brilliant. Another question here from X. What's the role of memory and reasoning for your agents? How might they improve over time?
Ashish?
Yeah, happy to. Yeah. So let's talk about memory and self-improvement, right? So the fundamental promise or the fundamental idea in self-improvement and memory is that these agents can learn, and these systems, these multi-agent systems, can learn from experience, and they accrue that experience, when they're used, but also through self-exploration, right? So when we talk about how do we use memory for self-improvement, there's multiple dimensions. One way I like to think about it is roughly as a hierarchy. So these agents, as they acquire this experience, either through self-exploration or through usage, they acquire knowledge. And we have found that in specialized domains like semiconductors, other such specialized domains, this knowledge acquisition, understanding specialized domain knowledge, also understanding all the tacit knowledge that resides in your enterprise and that you use for your enterprise applications, right? All of that is critical. So these agents and these systems acquire this knowledge. A second level is that they acquire skills. So Ravi talked about how once they've figured out that certain workflows can be completed in certain ways, that knowledge, that skill is persistent. So they acquire such skills. And then a third dimension is that the system acquires new capabilities by building new agents, right? It's an agent creation system. As it encounters new things that need to be done, it creates new agents. So, you can think about this as this kind of hierarchy. There's knowledge acquisition, there's skill acquisition, and then there's the creation and acquisition of new agents.
Brilliant. Wow, that's
And
intriguing.
there's an interesting dog fooding anecdote here in terms of like Craft helping us build Craft. So over time internally, we were manually writing code for connections with a lot of these systems, and Craft is actually now helping us do that and not saving us from some of that manual coding.
Wow, that's compelling. Question for me, actually, to Satya. Maybe you could take this one. I saw you were on a VentureBeat panel last week talking about what's next. So, how does Craft, how will it reshape the role of analysts and IT teams and engineers? What's the human impact that we could anticipate over the next weeks, months, years?
Yeah, I mean, a good question, Evan. So we think of agentic AI as, very what's happening here in kind of agentic AI in the digital space is very similar to what happened in the kind of in the physical space, right? So if you look at
Mm.
self-driving cars, autonomous driving, it's actually one of our gold standard, studies of, really well-built agentic systems, or particularly Waymo as an example. Okay. Of course, all the on the way to self-driving, there are a number of other automations that have actually seeped into modern automobiles, and the field is actually one of the most mature examples of agentic systems on the planet, and it's been around for about 20 years. And because it's been around for such a long time, there are standards. Okay, in software in general, standards lag innovation. I think it's true for most industries, of course, but in the case of agents, it's so new that there aren't any standards yet. But in autonomous driving, there are 5 levels of autonomous driving. The Society of Automobile Engineers came up with it, and they went on this march from simple automations like lane change assist all the way to fully autonomous systems. But what's interesting there is, and why that relates to enterprise, I'll make the connection in a second. But what's interesting there is, even the fully autonomous systems like Waymo has a human in the loop. It's just not evident. The human's not in the car; they're in a data center somewhere. Okay, so the way we look at agentic systems, if you're doing some kind of data automation, I think Shom went through the semiconductor yield example, yield improvement example in some detail, and across a variety of manufacturing situations. We're working with oil and gas companies, and we're working with non-manufacturing companies that also have big data, like health insurance companies with millions of claims, and we're just embarking on some projects there. What's actually common to all of these is, in enterprise, and with agents, which are very powerful systems, but do need a lot of human oversight. It's absolutely critical to put the human in the loop. So in a sense, the way that we visualize the shift is, it's going from humans doing all the coding and humans doing all the kind of the machine learning modeling or the agent building, etc., to humans essentially overseeing these systems, nudging these systems, ensuring they stay within guardrails, ensuring they produce outputs that are requisite. So the role the role of the human is evolving, and and it's evolving dramatically, actually. And these are new skills, so in a sense, metacognitive skills that people have to be taught. And so what we announced at VentureBeat, in addition to the launch of our platform, was a partnership with Andela, one of the world's largest workforce development companies, to train a variety of engineers and data scientists to go from having to build agents to manage agents and govern agents and work with agents. And we're actually getting ahead of a shift that we see that's going to happen in enterprise. Ultimately, of course, the highest level of abstraction for systems like this is that even business users with some analytical skills should be able to work with systems like this and derive value instantly.
Wow, that's so compelling. Another question on X. Um, Interoperability with LLMs, with frameworks, existing tools. How do you think about interoperability and being model agnostic?
Vivek, maybe you can handle this.
Yeah, sure. So, we try to match the underlying LLMs to the task, and it's almost an implementation detail. Now, if you have specific models that you want to use for some very enterprise specific task, we can surely work with that. But we internally use a number of different models in our implementation. Now, interoperability is a really important question because often enterprises already have deployed a number of agents, and we want craft to be able to interoperate with them. And there's a couple of different ways we can do that. We can obviously, we have an API. We also have kind of an SDK mechanism via which we can call out to existing agents in an enterprise, or vice versa. The agent could call craft. We've also really full-heartedly adopted MCP, the Model Context Protocol, given its fantastic uptake and adoption over the last couple of months. Um, and our system can be both an MCP client and an MCP server. What that means is if you have an agent that already exposes an MCP interface, we can seamlessly work with it. And vice versa, we can expose our craft system via MCP for you to work with your existing agents. All that is to say that interoperability has been a first class design goal for craft from the beginning, and we have a few mechanisms to do that really well.
Yeah, I
Well,
just wanted to add a little bit over what Vivek said. Right? This question about interoperability across LLMs is actually a brilliant one. What we have observed over the last few years is that, right, like one, models keep changing, second, models keep drifting, right, and the capabilities of models themselves are evolving. At the same time, right, like the exact jobs that need to be done within the enterprises, right, itself are getting defined as we try to use agentic technology in the field, right? So one of the very core activities that we've been doing is benchmarking. There is a continuous benchmarking activity that we are doing, which includes, right, like figuring out which language models are performing how for all these different kinds of tasks. It's not just at the agentic layer, at the LLM layer also, right? Like there needs to be continuous benchmarking so that enterprise applications get as much determinism as possible, right? Like with a technology that's inherently not deterministic.
brilliant. Another question from X is beyond the opportunity for data pipelines. What's your roadmap for agentic orchestration in general? So, what over the short term, long term, where are you going to take the platform? What can you share today?
Yeah, I'll start, and then I'll have Ashish and Shom and Ravi weigh in as well. Right, so guys, feel free to jump in. So I want to kind of set the stage a little bit by making some broad comments about agentic orchestration and kind of the way we're thinking about it, right? Um, so we about a year ago, we after we open sourced our web agent, and it's a very high quality autonomous agent with hierarchical planning, and today it's one of the few fully open source autonomous agents out there. We basically said what we can do next is to turn our attention to agent orchestration, and the idea there was not something that you would stitch together with right manually with drag and drop blocks or with simple linear chains, but could you actually build some kind of a dynamic orchestrator that would actually stitch systems and agents together on the fly and solve a variety of problems in the broadly in the digital action space. Okay, we realized that if you basically talk about this open-ended system that can perform actions and control any kind of system and talk to it and essentially finish a task, you're really talking about an AGI like system. Okay, and that's very complex, very difficult. And so this idea of a fully open-ended orchestrator, um, I think its time hasn't yet come. There are still some breakthroughs that are needed. In a sense, what we're saying here now is today is we are focusing on a subset of the types of actions one can do, especially in the data space, to ensure that we can actually get to a very high degree of accuracy, determinism, task completion, etc. And once we and even this is actually a very broad, very difficult, very open-ended challenge, even after you restrict it to data. But once we get better at this, we'll take a step back and say, let's move on to other challenges that are adjacent to it and broadly in the agentic coding space. So that's kind of the way we're looking at it. But I'd love my colleagues and friends here to weigh in and provide their insight here as well.
Yeah, so just to maybe add to what Satya said, right? So as Satya said, right, so the general orchestration problem um, is probably not, we haven't solved it yet, right? And by we, I mean the AI community hasn't solved it yet, right? So we are focusing on specialized domains, on specialized problems, and problems that require solutions that have a high degree of reliability and consistency, right? So that's our area of focus. Now, with that said, uh, there are a number of underlying technologies that need to, like a number of underlying technical capabilities that need to be perfected to get that high degree of reliability and consistency. So just very briefly, some of the broad areas that we are working on, right? We are working on how do we get these systems to acquire knowledge and acquire skills effectively through experience. We are working on problems of how do you instruct the system interactively to acquire specialized and tacit knowledge in a specialized domain or in a specialized enterprise applications. So there are a few such broad technical problems that we are solving in our quest to get reliability and consistency for special applications that we feel will be broadly applicable, right? So when we widen our aperture, many of these technical capabilities will prove to be very useful.
Yeah, and just to add to that, right, in terms of the platform itself, you can sort of divide into the base layer and a layer that is very specific to data. As Satya had mentioned, our focus is on the data space. So for the base layer, for example, what Ravi had mentioned before, we'll keep on expanding our connectors, right? We are supporting MCP connectors. We'll keep on expanding that. The other thing is, it's not only about creating agents, right? We'll be able to create. We currently can create, from natural language, you can create the agents, but it's also about agent deployment, scheduling. For example, you'll be able to schedule it on a periodic basis or on specific events. Right now, you can view the code. You'll be able to edit the code. Again, all this in the next quarter, to 6 months, right? Next 3 to 6 months is basically all this will happen over the next 3 to 6 months. And then the human in the loop is really a first party experience, right? As in, it needs to be, we'll keep continuing to expand the human in the loop UX. Then for the data layer itself, you can divide it into agentic data analysis, data governance, and data engineering. And we will continue to expand on these three things, including, for example, for data governance, things like supporting data catalogs for discoverability, metadata assessment, enrichment, data quality, and for data engineering, things like pipeline modification. So all that is in our next quarter or two roadmap.
Wow, very exciting. So I guess we have room for a final question or two from YouTube. How do I get started? If I'm a developer, integrator, what's the process and when can I get my hands on Craft?
Shom or Ravi, one of you guys?
Yeah, it is available currently for private preview. And we have a really capable DevRel, person who heads our DevRel, Vikas, who's going to essentially help bring in developers onto the platform, right? So this is available now. So if you are interested, please reach out. I believe on the website there's a way to reach out to essentially to Vikas so that we can give you access. So we should be able to do that. Ravi, anything else to add?
Yeah, we also wanted to add that, right? So that there's one developer motion for sure, right? And there's also another motion of directly working with clients that we have been doing, clients and partners, right? And we've been specifically focused on certain domains, so we're open to those kinds of engagements also on a case-by-case basis, right? Like we are, depending on how much effort and how much alignment there is, right? Like we are actually open to those kinds of engagements too.
And so people can, just to summarize, people can go to the website, sign up to be part of the private preview program, and we will be doing broader availability, I think, later on in the summer. But for the next few weeks, it's in private preview for developers and builders. And if enterprises want to go beyond what a platform can do now, there are a bunch of demos on the platform, and there'll be more. Every day we'll be posting new demos. If people want to work with us directly and say, look, we want you to build these governable, trustable agentic systems that deal with our data in our environment, please come talk to us directly.
Wow, very exciting. We covered a lot of ground, but in a very unstructured, a little bit chaotic way. So hopefully everyone followed that. Any final thoughts from each of you before we wrap it up and get back to work, doing the hard lifting that's required to get this to market? Any final thoughts? Any of you, feel free to raise a
Yeah,
hand on
Vivek,
anything
you
you
want
want.
to jump in?
Yeah,
You
I'd say, anytime you think of doing a new task or maybe even uh, think of redoing an existing task, definitely give craft a try. AI agents are here, they're getting better by the day. I think you'd be surprised at how much work they can take off your plate for you to focus on higher impact work. So try it out.
Brilliant. Any final thoughts, observations, words of wisdom? I don't think I've ever had so many PhDs on a single session here, so it's quite the brain power. A little bit intimidating, but any takeaways before we say goodbye?
We are very excited about where we are in AI, in agentic AI. I think this is still early days, but the power and the potential here is enormous. We're committed to building safe, secure agentic systems to truly unlock productivity for enterprises and for all your clients. So please reach out. Please don't hesitate. We'd be more than happy to work with you and help you through building your own agents and agentic systems.
Wow, that's quite a mic drop moment. Anyone else? Words of wisdom? Otherwise, I'll say thank you. And yeah, we haven't even had lunch yet, and yet we're at 500 plus viewers. Obviously, an incredibly important topic. And I'd like to suggest we do this again once we've had some more customer partner feedback and can give some more real world examples how agentic AI is truly transforming the enterprise. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys. Thanks, viewers, listeners.
Thanks all.
Okay. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Stay
Bye.
cool. Stay safe. Take care.